Welcome to this edition of Labor Vision. I'm Bob Delaney, Executive Director of the Institute for Labor Studies and Research. Labor Vision, a production of the Institute, focuses on topics of importance to working Rhode Islanders. We hope you enjoy this edition. Welcome to this edition of Labor Vision. I'm your host, Bob Delaney. The Rhode Island Labor History Society started in 1987, and since that time it has really provided the opportunity for many of the significant pieces in Rhode Island labor and Rhode Island labor history to be captured and saved and celebrated. And the current president of the Rhode Island Labor History Society is Jim Parisi. He's a field representative from the Rhode Island Federation of Teachers and Health Professionals, but I think more importantly right now, he is the president of the Rhode Island Labor History Society. And I can truly say he has made a significant input and increase in the number of activities that Rhode Islanders have the opportunity to experience in hearing about Rhode Island labor history and Rhode Island history in general. And we do have a rich history in terms of the Industrial Revolution and prior to the Revolution and even today. So Jim, welcome.
Thank you for having me on the show, Bob.
I'm really looking forward to having a conversation with you, being a historian of sorts. I've really had the opportunity to attend many of the events that you have created and hosted over the last couple of years. And I want to congratulate you. I think you do great work. I really believe that you make a difference and you provide the opportunity for people to connect with their history.
Yeah, thank you, Bob. Labor history is just a passion of mine. I went to school and got a college degree in labor relations, and it was the labor history course by Professor Nick Salvatore who really captured my interest. I remember to this day a lecture he gave on Eugene Debs and the city on the hill and the religious influence that had on the labor movement over 100 years ago. And it's just a whole set of interesting stories to tell, and we have a lot of great stories here in our state.
You know, it's interesting. I took a lot of my American colonial history courses being a Canadian at St. FX University, and I remember one of the faculty members, Neil McKinnon, who in taking those courses with him, it was kind of ironic because there was always kind of a British slant to American history and American colonial slant to American history, particularly around issues of the War of 1812 and a number of other pieces. So I always found it kind of interesting that sometimes history is open to interpretation based upon who's looking at the event. And I think that you have provided the opportunity, like one coming up on June 3rd with Patrick Crawley, to take a look at some of the most significant pieces of Rhode Island history.
We have a lot of things that have gone on in our state that are really notable, that are related to labor history. And the Labor History Society exists to promote these stories, to remind people about what we've done in the past. And we have a great program coming up really soon over at the Teamsters Hall on Monday, June 3rd, where Pat Crowley, who's done a lot of independent research on a specific project, is giving a talk about the history of the Boilermakers, Local 308, which was a huge union during World War II of shipyard builders. We were building warships during the Second World War, and there was a very large local down on the Providence shipyard that he's going to tell the story. But the real focus of the story is about racism and integration, or the lack of integration in some of our building trades at that time.
Yeah, I had a bit of a sneak preview talking with him yesterday at a meeting about the Boilermakers, and there seemed to be such interest in the fact that over a short period of time, there was a really large number of people that became members of the Boiler Workers Union, not just here, but elsewhere, because of the increase in the shipbuilding during the war. But it's interesting to watch who were the members of that union and the kind of discrimination that took place. And Pat brings so much to the table on that issue.
Well, when people think about racism in segregated workforces, especially up here north, people think about the South, but they don't realize, there was segregation and there was discrimination in a very real and tangible way in the state of Rhode Island. And he tells a story about during World War II where there were efforts to integrate the Boilermakers local. And, the shipyard workers, whether they were black or white, ought to have the same pay and benefits and be members of the same union. Because at the time, certain trades unions didn't allow people of color to be members, or they put them in a segregated auxiliary local. And Pat is going to tell that story about what happened and how that was addressed in a very direct way here in Rhode Island.
I think it's kind of important too in terms of Rhode Island history in general, when we take a look at that racism and discrimination and the importance of unions and the role that they played in trying to diminish that over the years, because being at the heart of the Industrial Revolution, being at the heart of shipbuilding during the wars, it became evident that the Industrial Revolution, that the World Wars, and the ratcheting up of manufacturing is not just such a rich piece of Rhode Island history, but a rich piece of cultural history for the country.
I mean, there was a lot of women working down at the shipyards as well. So there's issues of gender in addition to race that are at play here, particularly during World War II, when so many of the young men were sent overseas to fight the enemies on two different fronts. And there's a lot of interesting and compelling things that happened at that period of time that Pat really brings to light. And one thing that I know he emphasizes when he talks about this is that, there was, a legal strategy and some wrangling at the top, but it was really organizing at the grassroots where, black and white workers together were addressing these issues that made change. And he really brings to life, the fact that, we have grassroots groundswell of support of different ideas that really changed our society. It wasn't all, what happened in the U.S. Supreme Court or what happened in the halls of Congress or our State House, but it's on the shop floor where change is made in the workplace.
Well, it really is, and so typical of Rhode Island being such a lively experiment that we look at these things and see what impact they had. So what was the date again?
It is Monday, June 3rd. It's 5 p.m. and it's at the Teamsters Hall in East Providence.
So I would encourage people to attend. I think that it's something you'll truly learn a lot from. But let's move on to another event, an event that's been taking place with the Rhode Island labor history for many, many years, where you have the opportunity to celebrate people who have been involved in Rhode Island's labor history. But just before we talk about that, you're proceeding with an effort to bring in an intern so you can document the years of awards given by the Rhode Island Labor History Society.
Yeah. So every year, every summer, we hold a banquet where we honor different labor leaders or community leaders for their contributions to unions and to the working class and to our communities. And we've been doing that ever since we were founded in '87. So over the years, we've assembled a number of about 150 different individuals that we've honored. And the Rhode Island AFL-CIO passed a resolution at their last convention that they would work towards creating a permanent memorial, a permanent, significant, piece of whether it's art or anything else to commemorate the contributions of these 150 people. And George Nee of the Rhode Island AFL-CIO was instrumental in working with the state internship program, and we've secured an intern. It's a Brown University student, someone who's going to be a senior next year, who's going to work with us over the summer to create biographies and assemble biographies of all of the people we've honored over the last 3+ decades.
I know even from the Institute's perspective, and I think in many cases, if you were to take a look at some of the people that have been celebrated through the Institute and people who have been celebrated and recognized through the Rhode Island Labor History Society, there is some degree of crossover, because I think in many ways the Institute is looking at leaders today, and the Labor History Society is really looking at leaders today and yesterday, because I believe oftentimes we posthumously recognize individuals for their contribution. But it's also so nice to recognize people when they're here and now and have made such a significant impact on our lives.
So we do have a mix of both posthumous as well as living honorees, and we think it's important to look back as well as look at what's going on in front of us on this day and age. So we have 5 honorees this year for our summer banquet, which is going to be on August 22nd, where we have 2 posthumous awards. Dennis Lavallee recently passed away, business agent for the Teamsters, and Elizabeth Nord, who was active in the textile labor movement, 70 years ago, are the 2 posthumous awards we're going to give this year. And we also have 3 other awards. One, Colleen Callahan, someone you know well and dearly, my colleague at the Rhode Island Federation of Teachers and Health Professionals, is going to be one of our honorees, Tim Byrne, and then Joey DeFrancesco. And if folks remembered during the organizing over at the Renaissance Hotel, the famous Joey Quits, where he brought a band with him to issue his termination notice in a very bold and interesting way. So those are the 3 honorees in addition to the 2 posthumous awards this summer.
I think that's so great, and like taking a moment here even to remember Dennis Lavallee for the work that he did, and such a shock to labor to have him not with us to move forward and celebrate. So I truly want to thank you on that particular piece of recognizing so many people and the contributions that they've made. That event now is, you have the dates all ready for that event?
Yeah, August 22nd. It's always a Thursday evening, 5 o'clock over at Roger Williams Park Casino. It's Labor's big summer party, where we bring a lot of different labor leaders and community members together to not only recognize the honorees, which is the primary focus, but it's just important to get together in a very casual way sometimes.
Oh, I think it is, and I think the event has taken place at Roger Williams for a long time now, and it's an opportunity for people to get together and converse and celebrate and have a good time and recognize how lucky we are to have the benefits that we have. Just in kind of looking at the Labor History Society, I know that there have been a number of events that you've been instrumental in taking place, and I think there was an event a number of years ago at the Sacred Heart and a number of other places. Can you give us a highlight of some of the events that stand out in your mind?
Sure. So there are a couple of things we do every year. Every year we give cash awards to students who do labor-oriented projects for History Day, and we're hoping to bring some of those projects to the August banquet. And also every year we have a Labor Day address, where we give a speech at Mashassack Cemetery in Central Falls. We have different speakers every year. And anytime an author does an interesting labor-oriented work, we like putting those events together. So we had a poet who did a presentation on kissing the shuttle over at Slater Mill a couple of years ago. Eric Loomis, a professor at URI, wrote a book about the history of America in 10 strikes. So we had an event where he came and talked about his book and the different strikes that really showed American history in a different way. We had an author, Jerry Carbone, who did a book about the history of the Brown and Sharp company come and do a talk with an emphasis on some of the labor relations. There was a strike over 100 years ago in addition to the very famous one in the early 80s.
Right,
so those are different book events that we've held, and we do some cultural history as well, where we've had talks about the Irish on Federal Hill, which was an interesting talk over at Holy Ghost Church, as well as a talk about the pasta riots, where there were food riots in 1915 around the time of World War I, right here in Federal Hill.
Right. Well, and we would be remiss if we didn't mention Scott Malloy. Labor History Society and Scott Malloy, it's like fingers and thumbs. They just go together.
He's our founder. He's our guide star. He still does a significant amount of work for us. He writes the newsletters, and all the big ideas that we come up with tend to come from his mind.
Well, I can't think of a better note to end this program on than talking about Scott Malloy. And I'm sure, like if you listen really closely, he's probably out there and you can hear his voice from here. I want to take this opportunity to thank you for watching this edition of Labor Vision. Our guest was Jim Parisi, who is primarily the president of the Rhode Island Labor History Society and the field representative for the Rhode Island Federation of Teachers, somebody who's committed to improving the lives of people and ensuring that we remember the rich history that made us us. Jim, thanks for attending this show, and I look forward to talking again.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show.
Thanks for watching this edition of Labor Vision. Good evening.
Welcome to the 2019 Leadership for a Future graduation. I want to start by thanking everyone for being here. First, the class graduates, thank you so much for showing up and for being here. And second, I wanted to thank all of your friends and family who came and joined us for this. I'm really excited about this class. I might be a little bit biased because this is my first Leadership for a Future class that I'm actually facilitating and coordinating, directing, but I could not say enough how thankful I am that I had you guys as my first group. Thank you for being so patient with me and for showing up to class every day, excited to learn, to hear from our speakers, and to just unpack some of the topics that we talked about. To kick us off for the evening, I just want to introduce Robert Delaney, the Executive Director at the Institute for Labor Studies and Research.
Thanks, Erica. I usually start this in the same way every year, and I think it's very appropriate. I want you to stop for a minute and don't look up here, look up here. Look at this whole building. And think of the rich history that has taken place for so many years that helped to frame the lives that you and I share today. In these chambers, in the house across the way, there sit in these chairs, people who graduated from the Leadership for a Future class before you. And my goal would be that one of you would be in one of these chairs in a reasonably short time. But all leadership doesn't have to take place from these chairs. This is the most obvious place. This is where the laws that we abide by get framed and debated and finalized and then signed by the governor. And there are hundreds of years of that history. But the job of leadership for us oftentimes starts much earlier than that. Whether it's your role as a parent or an aunt or an uncle or a community leader or a union leader or a church leader or a class president, whatever the case may happen to be, and I think in the group that I'm looking at right now, if we were to take a look at it and say, raise your hand if you think you played a significant role in leadership and changing the lives of people, we would have many people in here that know that they already did it. Even more people who would know that as time passes, they'll have the opportunity to make those kind of changes again. So I'm very pleased to introduce Rob Jones, who's the Chief Empowerment Officer for Teeley Associates. We contract with him to come in to do, the first retreat. Rob, welcome.
It's not just what you're born with. It's what you choose to bear. It's not how large your share is, but what you choose to share. It's not the fights you dream of, but those that you really fought. It's not just what you're given, but it's what you do with what you've got. Leadership for a Future class of 2019, the Rhode Island Institute for Labor Studies and Research, friends, families, and supporters. Good evening. I'd like all of you to give yourselves a round of applause right now. Without you, this program could not succeed. I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to address you this evening. At this most precious moment in a time of transition for this class of 2019, my remarks are from my heart and intended to inspire you to continue to grow and not give up, no matter what. I chose the poem I read to you at the start because it was one of the first that was presented to me when I was at a crossroad in my life. I understand that many of you, as we sit here, are at a crossroad in your own lives. You might be graduating from this program, and tonight you'll receive your certificate of completion. But what you do from this moment on will affect the rest of your life. The person who wins is the person who thinks they can. Good luck, and I'll see you again.
I'll work with the NAACP. I hear the comments in terms of the look of the NAACP, both nationally and locally. You know, some people think there are too many older people. Nothing wrong with older people. Right, George? Some people think there are too many people that are from out of town or even out of the country. Right, Bob? Canadian, right? That's right. Some people feel there's not enough women in leadership, you know, with the NAACP and the civil rights movement. You hear a lot about Martin Luther King, you hear a lot about Thurgood Marshall, but not enough about Ella Baker, not enough about Fannie Lou Hamer, for example. The only person that's female that you hear about is maybe Rosa Parks. So, you know, I'm hearing all this stuff, and I said, you know what? These are legitimate concerns. But where am I going to find, how am I going to figure this out? And then I ran into a young lady at a play that was about gentrification. It was at Trinity, and I introduced myself, and we had something in common in that we both lived in East Providence. I had lived there for about 9 years, and we both graduated from schools in Pennsylvania, Temple University, University of Pennsylvania. So we kind of started that way, and then within maybe a month, I had convinced her to be the branch secretary. There's only 3 positions that are in leadership at the NAACP. There's the president, the secretary, and the treasurer, so I wanted her to be the secretary, the 3 most powerful positions. And she's accepted, and she's taken on this in such a way that, you know, I really have been inspired. You know, she's inspired me, because I got to keep it moving. I got to keep this train going. And I constantly got to get new people, you know, because people leave. They leave town. So the fact that you guys have seen in this person what I've seen is amazing. It's a coincidence. It's fascinating. So without further ado, I'd like to bring up the Secretary of the NAACP Providence Branch and your class speaker, Nicole Tingle.
Thank you, Jim. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to families, friends, graduates. This moment is pretty surreal. I never would have imagined that I would be here speaking to you. And I am very honored to speak upon my classmates and represent for us. As we celebrate the closing of an intense leadership training filled with hours of consuming invaluable knowledge and great food, we also celebrate the beginning of a new community, a community of leaders that I would consider my friends. Friends with the common goal to influence positive change in Rhode Island. During our journey, there was one very powerful, defining moment where I knew that it was destiny that all of us came together. It was the final day of our retreat in the woods in a log cabin somewhere down in South County, Rhode Island. We had a lot of great moments. We mingled, we had dinner together, we woke up, breakfast, many fun interactives to explore what our why is. What is going to drive us to be able to continue to lead the change? And then Rob Jones, at the end of the retreat, said, take a moment and look each and every one of your peers in their eyes. There was a great tranquil music in the background, and we looked into each and every one of each other's eyes. For some of us, it may have felt like an eternity. But as I looked into each and every one of your eyes, We communicated soul to soul. When I looked into each and every one of your eyes, I seen hope, I seen determination, I seen passion, and I seen courage. Most importantly, what I didn't see was fear. I seen something very beautiful, and it was selflessness. I fought back my tears as I looked into each and every one of your eyes like I am right now, because I knew that I was within a safe place. Every great leader creates a safe place for those that they are leading. And that's really rare, and it's a very beautiful thing to be amongst a group of people, every single individual, and to just know that you're within a safe place in such a short period of time. And that is something that we should be sure to do in our communities to continue creating safe spaces. True leaders explore their why. They explore their why as similar to why we decided to dedicate our time to the leadership program. They then continue by collaborating with others to innovate ways that can make a great change. Over the past 2 months, we did just that very effectively while motivating and coaching one another along the way. We understand that the keys to influence long-term change is confidence and consistency. Leadership for a Future 2019, we are a very diverse, dynamic group. We are fueled by our whys and are courageous enough to leverage our resources for positive social change. I encourage each and every one of you in this room to do the same within your own right, as my peers have done before, during, and in the future. If you do not know where to start, don't fret. We will be right there to look you in your eyes and let you know that you are safe. We will motivate you and lift you while you climb into your own right to lead change in our community. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this edition of Labor Vision. We appreciate your input and encourage your comments. Labor Vision can be seen on this channel 3 times each week, Tuesday at 7 p.m., Thursday at 8 p.m., and Saturday at 5 p.m.